My writing is not always good. In fact, sometimes it is bad. And even though I always say that we aren't great judges of our own work and it's hard for us to be objective, no matter how hard you try, even if you try your best, even if you do your best work, sometimes you miss the mark, either by your own standards or by someone else's standards. Again, even when you have good intentions, even when you're trying your hardest, sometimes it just doesn't work out great. And we move on, obviously. That's the moving on is, I have tons of other videos of how we just, keep working. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think everything that I just said is very reasonable sounding and very understandable when you're talking about professions other than writing. But when we move into the realm of writing as a profession, I think there is this misconception that, well, if you're a bad writer or you do bad writing work, then you can't work as a writer. The two just can't coexist when, again, if we look at any other profession, it's very reasonable that sometimes we just miss the mark. But with a job as a writer or even as an editor, it's like, oh, you can't make a mistake, you can't be a bad writer, you can't have bad work, otherwise, it's all over, you're not going to continue working. And that's not true for a lot of reasons, but the reasons that I'm talking about today are in the realm of all the other things that go into writing as a profession that have nothing to do with your actual skill as a writer, because writing as a job requires so many other responsibilities and skill sets that don't have to do with how great of a writer. So I can make mistakes as a writer. I can make mistakes as an editor, and my career goes on. One, because I choose for it to go on, because I just keep working. And two, because there are a lot of other positive factors that are contributing to my career as a writer, besides just my writing ability on any given day. And that's not just me. That's how all working writers operate. So I'm sort of painting a portrait of what a responsible writer looks like that enables them to have the type of creative work that they do for a living. And I wrote about this on Copyblogger last week. Of course, that's why I'm talking about it today. And all the details are in the article. I'm going to link to it below, of course. So if you want the in-depth version, because I do get into more detail there about why what I'm talking about is important and why it really is a game changer if you want to work as a writer. So definitely check out that article. But I wanted to go over the 7 steps just briefly in this video, because I think you could get a lot out of them and definitely get an overview of what I'm talking about if I just go over the steps in a concise way. So step number 1 is leave it at the virtual door. And this means when you go into your writing job, you put aside things that are bothering you in your personal life and you focus on your work. You can bring those things to your work, but don't bring them to your work interactions, because if you're working as a writer, you're usually not solo. The writing work is solitary, but you have interactions with other people if you're a part of a digital marketing team, and you want to, I use the word professional, I don't love it, but you really just want to show up to work, to be the person who shows up to do work. It seems so simple. I feel ridiculous saying it, but you don't want to be the type of writer who brings all of their personal stuff to work, because again, writers are humans and we have stuff, but leave it at the door when you start interacting with your coworkers. Step number 2 is practice the short version. So all these steps build on each other, as my steps typically do. And the short version is just a way of being considerate of other people's time. And if you have an explanation, if you have an issue, if you have an obstacle, a challenge, just something that you need to explain, the short version is an art form. And people will notice that you're respecting their time by just giving the essential details and not a very long-winded version. We often feel like that long-winded version is important, that everything is significant, because we're writers, we're detail-oriented. We want to give all of that extra stuff, but you will build stronger relationships with the people you work with if you, again, show consistently that you respect their time and you only communicate with the short version of what you need to explain. And then over time, if you build closer bonds and closer even friendships maybe with the people that you work with, they'll welcome the longer versions of your stories. But you don't start out that way. It's baby steps. Do the short version. There may be a time and place in the future where your long versions are welcome, but don't assume that you're best friends with everyone right away and that they want to hear all the details. Step number 3 is, I have to check what step number 3 is. They're on my screen and I don't remember it off the top of my head. Step number 3 is try before asking. No one wants to answer a question that you could have easily Googled. So just show that you are proactive about your work, that you take the initiative to try to look for a solution before you ask someone else for help. There is nothing wrong with asking someone else for help. It is very normal and natural. Obviously, you're not going to always know how to do everything, or there might be something that you're not sure about, so you want to confirm. All of that is fine, but you're going to build strong relationships if you're not just like looking like you're passing your work off to someone because you're just, you might not be lazy or inexperienced, but it can come off that way if you're just like, hey, what's this? Hey, what's that? Without making any effort beforehand to look up the answer to your question. Step number 4 is share your practices and research. So if you do your own research to find the answer to a question you were wondering about, there might be someone else on your team who will have that question in the future. Don't be afraid to take the initiative to create documents that help keep everyone on the same page. You don't have to force what you've learned. You don't have to force the best practices that you do in your own work on other people. But if you see that other people on your team are struggling or asking the same questions over and over again, you can definitely take the initiative to say, hey, I created this document. It has like a frequently asked questions section, so other people can reference it, and your team isn't just like wasting time by asking each other questions and answering those questions, because sometimes there aren't those standard operating procedures in when you come into working with a team. Sometimes there are, and sometimes they could be expanded on, but if you take the initiative to create documents that could potentially help your coworkers, again, it builds stronger bonds. People will appreciate it. That information is there if they need to reference it. Maybe no one needs to reference it, but it just shows that you care about everyone's work days going smoothly and that you care about working efficiently by providing things that could potentially be helpful for someone else in the future. Step number 5 is related. It is take ownership of your work. And so, a good example of this are content writers who are also sharp editors, but it shouldn't stop there. What else can you learn to become an invaluable part of a digital marketing team? And so just think about ways that you can grow your role. If you want to expand what you actually have responsibility over in your job currently, think about what else you could learn. Take ownership of all your projects from the beginning to the end. So again, you're not passing off work to other people. You show that, hey, I can handle this whole project by myself. It's not that, other people can't or shouldn't be involved, but that if need be, hey, look what you can do on your own. You're more than just a writer. Step number 6 is to choose kindness. This one is very simple, but the way that I like to put a context around choosing kindness is, do you like being a writer? If you like being a writer, you should have a great attitude when you show up to work, because you get to do something that you love. And, maybe you don't always need to be right. Maybe you don't always need to prove your point. If you are the person who is choosing kindness over constant pushing of a topic when it just needs to be dropped, those things really help build stronger relationships with your coworkers. And step number 7 is do what you say you're going to do. Seems pretty obvious for me to state this one, but I'm sure you know someone who you ask them to do something and you know that it's actually not going to happen, or they'll say yes and you really aren't sure that they're going to follow through, or you're not sure if they're going to follow through on time. Are you going to have to keep bugging them? All of that makes your working environment less efficient. Like, all this could really come down to efficiency. You want to have a digital marketing team that runs like a well-oiled machine. And if people aren't meeting their deadlines, if they're just not doing what they're saying that they're going to do, that was kind of a clunky sentence. But these are all things that stop up smooth workflows that we don't want. So that is all to say. I mean, all of these steps really come down to creative work can definitely have a chaotic, excuse me, a chaotic nature to it. So I say creative chaos, stable work ethic. It's combining, that sort of wild craziness that is part of being a creative writer, but then also having a stable work ethic that allows you to grow a career as a writer. They really work hand in hand. They're sort of left brain and right brain, a balance of those two, because you're able to be really innovative, but then also have follow through and execute your creative vision, which is what makes you a responsible content writer. So those are the steps. Please go over to Copyblogger. Again, I will link the article below. And that is it for this week. If you're not already subscribed to the Revision Fairy channel, before you leave, definitely make sure to tap the red subscribe button below the video and hit the notification bell. I post videos once a week or every week. Sometimes it's more than once a week. It's usually once a week, but it's every week. So if you tap the notification bell, also you'll get a note letting you know that I have a new video for you. And give this video a like if you are striving to be a responsible working writer. I will talk to you soon.